when we talked about what is the vision and national service, I think it does not begin or should not begin at the high school level. I think it needs to go to the primary school level.
Leveraging and launching our creative industries in the country.
That's gotten mixed reviews.
Well, I think what got mixed reviews is not the concept, but the labeling.
What we do today will affect those coming after us.
Good evening, Bahamas, and thanks for joining us at MB12. Coming up tonight in news, days after Bahamian government officials christened the Bimini Superfast in Florida, the ship is still docked at Miami's port. We'll tell you why. Fire destroys a government complex on North Eleuthera. A shadow minister tours the Carmichael Road Detention Center following reports of how detainees at the facility are being treated. The family of a man who died in police custody still awaiting answers to what led to his death. Plus, the Independent Story airs tonight. We have those stories and much more coming up tonight. I'm Christina McNeil, and your MB12 starts right now. Joining us. Bahamian government officials, including Prime Minister Perry Christie and ministers of his cabinet, turned out in large numbers on Friday for the highly publicized christening of Bimini Superfast in Florida. The ship is expected to carry hundreds of thousands of passengers to Bimini on an annual basis. However, 4 days after the big event, the cruise ship remains in port. The chief of the U.S. Coast Guard's Inspection Division tells MB12 the vessel failed inspections because it had what she called a laundry list of deficiencies. The Prime Minister says he is disappointed by this setback, but added safety is priority. Fanique Toot reports.
Prime Minister Christie and members of his delegation were expected to travel from Florida to Bimini on the Superfast ferry. However, it has not yet received approval from the Coast Guard, and he's not quite sure when it will make its first trip to Bimini. Chief of the Inspection Division at the U.S. Coast Guard, Janet Espino-Young, told MB12 via telephone today the 32,000-ton vessel and its crew failed a laundry list of tests, which gauged their performance in emergency situations.
Among a laundry list of some deficiencies that was issued to the vessel, but the big ones were the abandoned ship drill was failed. The crew did not have the proficiency or the knowledge regarding the safety systems on board and understanding how an evacuation should happen. And also they failed their emergency transitional power test, which is their emergency power in the event of the vessel's loss of power.
That means the cruise ship, which is expected to transport up to 400,000 passengers to Bimini on an annual basis, will remain docked at Port Miami for now. Prime Minister Christie, who christened the ship on Friday, called it disappointing.
Most certainly, I would want the most rigorous testing myself, and so even though there is some disappointment that the ship has not yet cruised, the fact of the matter is it is all because, as I understand it, ensuring that safety is the priority.
Christie and other Bahamian government officials were forced to catch a flight from Florida to Bimini, where he also opened a new Resorts World casino, which is expected to inject millions of dollars into that island's economy. He says he was informed that the cruise ship would not be able to sail to that island on that day before he arrived in Florida. Meantime, Espino-Young says officials from the U.S. Coast Guard returned to the vessel over the weekend. She says this time around, the crew successfully completed emergency tests, but other deficiencies still exist.
On Saturday, we went back on board and actually witnessed the successful abandoned ship drill and lowering of the lifeboats, and then the deployment of their emergency evacuation system. And then we're still working with the ship with the list of deficiencies that are still pending, and until such time that those deficiencies are either completed or resolved, the vessel will not be allowed to sail with passengers from the U.S.
Espino Young said it is uncertain when the ship will be allowed to leave Port Miami because operators are going through the ship to correct both administrative and physical items. She says operators also had to order parts for the ship and are now waiting for them to come in. She said Coast Guard officials are communicating with operators on a daily basis and will give approval when those remaining items are addressed. Christie said though the ship did not sail on Friday as planned, passenger safety is priority.
From what I gathered at the time, the Coast Guard had the responsibility of approving the sailing of the ship, and that they had not finished with their processing. And, given what has been happening recently with cruise ships, even though the journey between Bimini and it's just a 2-hour, Bimini and Florida is just a 2-hour journey, I think it's Bimini and Fort Lauderdale for accuracy, it's a 2-hour journey. They have to be very careful because you're talking about taking 400,000 people during a course of a year.
Bimini Superfast reportedly received safety inspections overseas after it was built in 2001. According to the Miami Herald, Panama then certified the ship to carry passengers. Before Miami, the cruise ship operated out of the Greek Isles. The Genting ship had never entered U.S. waters until 2 weeks ago. Reporting for NB12, I'm Vonique Toot.
Well, today, Bimini Superfast released a statement saying that the safety of its passengers is always top priority, and it is working with the Coast Guard to complete all outstanding safety checks. Well, Prime Minister Perry Christie says he left Friday's event in Florida and Bimini feeling good that his government has done something great for that tiny island. However, he says he was disappointed to learn that government was being criticized for the treatment of Bahamian media. He says reporters are pointing the finger at the wrong people, adding they're not the only ones who expressed concern.
PLP for Miami trip when we didn't invite you on the trip. That was a countless trip. Why don't you do that with PLP?
I do it.
I noted criticism by certain journalists of their disappointment on how the Genting affair was organized or not organized. And I was sort of bemused by it because we were invited, like the press was invited.
Reporters felt the trip was disorganized, noting they were not fed. To make matters worse, they were bumped off their flight and did not return to New Providence until nearly 9 p.m. Christie says he feels it was wrong for some people to blame the government for problems that arose during the trip.
We have to, in terms of when we are annoyed at something, governments and developers learn from experiences like that. And where you have in Bimini a two-event kind of occasion, one in Florida and the next one in Bimini, and you find that there were glitches, you try to learn from them and move forward. But it's not correct to blame the government for it because we would have been as concerned as you.
Christie asserts that a local public relations firm was retained by Genting to coordinate that trip that began in Florida and ended in Bimini. However, he says government has learned from this experience. On the island of Eleuthera, dark smoke billowed from North Eleuthera's administrators complex this morning as the building went up in flames. According to reports, the fire sparked after 10 a.m. and thankfully no one was injured. Island Administrator Jolton Johnson told our news team he was approaching Lower Bogue when he spotted the smoke on the horizon, but he had no idea of the scope of the blaze until he drew closer to the government complex. That's when he says he noticed smoke coming from his office. He claims the fire was electrical, but admitted a more thorough investigation was needed. Janitress at the building, Anna Mae Davis, says she was disposing of empty boxes when she smelled smoke. It was then that she helped other workers in the building to evacuate. Those workers were able to get out unharmed, but Davis says the fire engine took a while to get there. Firefighters eventually put out the flames. By then, the building was destroyed. More than 2 weeks after a video that purported to show Cuban detainees at the Carmichael Road Detention Center being beaten by Bahamian officers surfaced online, St. Anne's MP Hubert Chipman says today he has found no signs that detainees have been assaulted following a tour of the facility. Royston Jones has the story.
Chipman says apart from some concern about spacing and the potential in future for flooding, the facility, all things considered, looks adequate. And he said he found no signs of any detainees being assaulted. Chipman, the Free National Movement Shadow Minister of Foreign Affairs and Immigration, said the detainees appear to be in relatively good condition.
As I indicated, they appear to be in good condition.
So you would say then that the allegations of abuse, you didn't see any, I guess, markings or anything like that that could?
No, I did not see any evidence of abuse. None whatsoever. Relatively, the detainees are in good condition. Most of the men were bareback. Most of them are on flip-flops, short pants. The ladies appear to be in good condition. I also asked how often do they do health screening, right? And they do health screening when the inmates come in, when the detainees come in, and at least once a week the doctor comes down.
In recent weeks, Cuban ambassador to the Bahamas, Ernesto Soberan Guzman, told our news team that detainees continue to express concern about living conditions at the facility, but they have not reported anything significant. Guzman also toured the facility on June 20th, but has declined to speak about his visit, even when contacted today for comment. Chipman noted that while the living conditions could be better, quote, under the conditions it is probably adequate, but he did express concern about shortage of space at the facility, which he says is prone to flooding in some buildings. However, NB12 was not permitted on the tour to gain a first-hand look at living conditions and the concerns Chipman mentioned.
The area is very, very low, and there's a lot of flooding, right, including in the dormitories. So when it rains, there's a problem here at the detention center. There are only 3 dormitories. There are 2 male dormitories and 1 female dormitory. There are 35 females presently housed inside the female, and they don't have an average time as to how long they be at the detention center.
As far as damage to the property, Chipman said he was made to understand that detainees frequently destroy property and sometimes use the springs from mattresses as weapons. Director of Immigration William Pratt said in a separate interview that 228 Haitian detainees were deported to Port-au-Prince, Haiti on 2 separate flights today. An estimated 57 additional Haitian migrants were transported to the facility this afternoon. There are a total of 38 Cuban detainees at the center. Chipman says 2 dormitories that were destroyed by fire will be repaired soon as far as he understands, and closed-circuit television surveillance could be installed by Friday. Reporting for NB12, I'm Royston Jones.
Meanwhile, 59 Haitian migrants are being processed after they were apprehended on a sloop in the Exuma chain Monday afternoon. According to the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, the migrants were spotted on a 40-foot sloop 7 nautical miles off Norman's Key. The 48 men, 9 women, and 2 children on board the vessel were without proper documentation to enter the Bahamas, and their vessel was considered unsanitary. RBDF officers transferred the migrants to the Defense Force vessel for transportation to the capital, where they are being processed.